Bay City Council opposes the idea of a used nuclear waste repository near Ignace. Good evening and thank you for joining us. Thunder Bay City Council is speaking out against the idea of a nuclear waste dump in the region and the transportation of used nuclear fuel through the city.
Council voted at last night's meeting to urge Canada's Nuclear Waste Management Organization to keep the used fuel closer to where it's generated. Lee Noonan was at the meeting and brings us this report.
More than 50 protesters and a couple of local political leaders showed up outside City Hall to voice their opposition to the disposal of nuclear fuel near Ignace and to urge City Council to join in their opposition.
They should be having consultation, real consultation with the communities along the highway before a site selection happens.
We're asking Council to urge the Nuclear Waste Management Organization to seek a solution whereby they can store this waste in secure storage near the reactors, where it is now stored and where it was produced.
Kirsten Oliver, chair of the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, brought forward a motion to have administration review the city's dangerous goods route in light of the potential for nuclear waste being transported through the city. Anti-nuclear activists Charles Faust and Mary Veltri addressed council, asking them to take a stand against that possibility. And Councillor Andrew Folds put forward an amendment proposing just that.
If this is so safe, why are you trucking it or railing it across the country to store it in the middle of nowhere? It doesn't make sense to me.
The only reason why it's coming up north is because 100,000 people are not as loud as 10 million people in Southern Ontario. There's no other reason why it would come up this way.
I don't buy into the fact they're putting it here because we lack numbers. I do think they're putting it here because it is the heart of the Canadian Shield, which is extremely stable.
If nothing else, it's worth it to go out and to bring this up so at least there can be a consideration of making the highway safer.
I believe it's going to be a positive impact, to be honest. Economically speaking, we're in the opioid crisis, we're in a poverty crisis.
The amendment passed in a close 7-5 vote, but the motion as a whole passed easily.
I'm actually elated. It was a long night, but we had a positive outcome. We hooted once we got into the elevator and doors closed.
If the motion is ratified, the city will take a look at how dangerous goods move through Thunder Bay and write to the federal government and NWMO, urging them to consider managing nuclear waste closer to the reactors. In response, an NWMO spokesperson says they had, quote, been already considering this for more than a decade, adding that they will be choosing a site once they've received expressions of interest from all of the candidate communities. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
Council also signed off on the budget direction for 2025 last night. Administration will come back with a city services budget that limits the tax levy increase to 3.8% before growth. That in spite of the fact that costs are expected to go up 6 to 8%.
Let's not kid ourselves. It's going to be very, very difficult.
City staff have committed to finding efficiencies without cutting any services, although they say service reductions may be considered as a last resort. City staff will also limit personnel costs to just a 1% increase and promise that won't affect salaries. Council members were very supportive of the plan proposed by city staff, which aims to tie budget increases to 4-year inflation averages for at least the next 2 years. City Manager John Collins says tax increases in the 7% range are unsuitable and could scare away new businesses. And that, he says, will eventually leave city finances worse off.
If we take the other fork in the road and tighten our belts just a little bit now, then we can achieve a much more sustainable path as we move forward.
If you were going to purchase a new truck and the dealer is offering a $3,000 cash back, normally you might just apply that $3,000 to the truck loan to decrease the monthly payments. Alternatively, you could invest that $3,000 and buy a plow for your truck and leverage that investment to earn more money on the side and grow your income potential.
Growth in the city's tax base normally leads to a reduced tax rate. But this coming year, admin will instead look for ways to leverage that revenue to foster new economic growth. The current budget applies only to tax-supported city services. Outside boards and agencies like the DSAB and police set their own budgets. That will affect next year's tax levy, but the city will ask them to aim for that same 3.8% increase.
Thunder Bay Police and Superior North EMS responded to Redwood Plaza yesterday after a body was discovered behind the mall. Police haven't said if foul play is suspected in the death. However, at this time, a police spokesperson says they don't expect to issue any further updates to the media. Several officers and investigators with the Major Crimes Unit responded to the 400 block of Edward Street yesterday afternoon, specifically to the area behind the beer store. Police confirmed the deceased was an adult male. The area was cordoned off for several hours, but is no longer being held by police.
Anishinaabe-Aski police in Casablanca Lake First Nation have charged a 17-year-old male with aggravated assault after an altercation early Friday morning left another teen with life-threatening injuries. Police say it happened near the community's outdoor hockey rink. The victim is also a 17-year-old male who's since been transported to hospital here in Thunder Bay. The accused was arrested on Sunday. He appeared in court yesterday and remains in custody.
Well, it was a quick end to that first ever nationwide rail stoppage involving CN Rail and Canadian Pacific Kansas City.
More than 9,000 unionized employees are back to work this week, including about 100 here in Thunder Bay, to catch up with scheduled shipments. Jaden Billick spoke about the backlog today with the CEO of the Port of Thunder Bay, and he files this report.
All I can say is that we're pleased that the railways are back to work.
After a very quiet few days on the shipping docks, Port CEO Chris Heikkinen, along with the staff working at Kiefer Terminal, were relieved to hear the government had intervened and forced the two sides to binding arbitration in order to end the historic work stoppage at Canada's two main railways. Heikkinen says as some of the local terminals are 24-hour operations, every minute they were down had an impact on their shipments and productivity.
The rail stoppage did result in delays of rail cars coming to Thunder Bay with product that would ultimately be shipped out. So we did have an impact as a result of the rail stoppage, and we'll probably continue to see that impact in the coming days.
Heikkinen added that fortunately the stoppage was short enough to not have a significant impact in terms of losing full shipments. However, every day lost cost the shippers a significant amount of dollars due to the ocean vessels and lakers sitting idle in the local port. But on the bright side, the port is now full steam ahead and ready to unload and transport the goods.
All of the ships that are in harbor are waiting for grain and potash. We do have inbound vessels in the coming weeks that'll be bringing product in, for example, to Kiefer Terminal. And so, fortunately, just the timing worked out and we didn't have any significant impacts here at Kiefer.
Firefighters quickly extinguished a fire at a Hudson Avenue apartment building yesterday evening. Crews were called to the three-story building just before 8 o'clock. Fortunately, they were able to contain the blaze to one room. The cause is now under investigation.
TBT has a new president and CEO. The board of directors has chosen Paul Norris to head up the city-owned utility starting October 1st. Norris has spent 27 years in the telecom industry, mainly with Bell MTS in Manitoba. He says he's humbled to be selected to head up TBT.
I feel thrilled to be taking over the role and frankly honored. When I started to look at opportunities, and three things were really important to me. Number one, I wanted to be in a company where I really believed in the work that was being done. Second thing, I wanted to work with exceptional people that are resourceful and great at finding solutions. And then the third piece is there's a big philanthropic part of me, and TBT is absolutely perfect when it comes to all three of those pieces.
Norris replaces Dan Topatai, who announced his retirement earlier this year after a decade as president and CEO. Norris says under Topatai's leadership, the company has done an exceptional job of servicing the Northwest. Norris looks forward to moving here from Winnipeg and getting to know the whole team at TBT.
I think my first set of actions getting there is meeting everybody and listening to to everything that's going great, and then determining where we want to go together after that. So I'm trying my best not to get ahead of myself. October 1st is the day that I start in with this great company.
A group of cyclists arrived in Thunder Bay last night after traveling halfway across the country. The group, made up of leadership from Equinox Gold, left this morning on their way to celebrate the grand opening of the company's mine in Greenstone. The cyclists left Vancouver 3 weeks ago and have now nearly reached their final destination. The group took turns either biking or driving alongside those who were. In addition to being a celebration of the new gold mine, the trip is also raising money to donate to the Geraldton District Hospital. So far, the ride has raised over $1.3 million. Equinox Gold CEO Greg Smith says turning the trip into a hospital fundraiser was a win for both the mine and the communities that make up Greenstone.
We've just built, a long life mine right beside it. We need to have first-class medical care for all of our employees, plus the community of Geraldton, which is right also beside the mine, will benefit from having a great hospital in the area too.
And we thought it would be a nice extra bonus, not only to provide employment for the workers in the area and a lot of services and really build up that whole region, but also provide some support for the health and well-being of the community through support of the hospital.
We'll have more on the mine's grand opening celebration later this week on the NewsHour.
All right, let's turn our attention to the weather now. Fiona, yesterday we were bemoaning the high humidity that we had yesterday, getting up to 42 degrees. A little bit of a different story out there today.
Bemoaning? I think I'd say I was downright whiny.
You're downright complaining. Yeah.
I was downright whiny. 42 humidex, that was a little bit too much today. It's a perfect example of what a difference a day can make, because today we had still some rain, but mostly to the south of us, and throughout the day it just kind of pushed through. So we had that massive storm last night that was much more aggressive than many had expected. We've still got some systems to the south, which is why we've had so much cloud cover for much of Thunder Bay and a few areas to the west. But Fort Frances in the last few hours has started to clear out. Thunder Bay, though, mostly cloudy throughout the day, and I believe in the last hour or so has become completely cloudy. But we topped out with a high of 21 and a humidex of 24. That was after an early morning low of 18, so not a lot of movement in the temperatures. The winds started out pretty light, 9-10 kilometers per hour for much of the morning from the north-northeast, so that was cool air off the lake. It's just been in the last few hours in the afternoon that it's been kicking up to, at times, 34 kilometers an hour. Now, as I said, a lot of cloud to the south and some of it affecting areas to the west as well, but Fort Frances has enjoyed a little bit of clearing in the last hour or so. Red Lake, increasing clouds, but you can see the change in temperatures that we've had here are happening across the region. 17 in Red Lake and Sioux Lookout, 19 in Pickle Lake and Kenora, 21 still in Fort Frances. They did see the humidex hit 25 this afternoon, but most of the region to the north of Lake Superior not dealing with any humidex values, much drier conditions, and mainly sunny in Greenstone until about 2 hours ago. And that's when the clouds have started to push in. They're currently at their high of 18 along the North Shore, usually a little bit cooler, but actually pretty consistent with everyone else. Sault Ste. Marie, however, continues to be quite steamy. Now, you wouldn't think so just looking at them at 23 Celsius, but the humidex is still sitting at 33 at this hour, and it actually topped out at 36 earlier. They've had mostly cloudy skies. Just in the last 10-15 minutes, they've had a little bit of a shower move in. Here in the city of Thunder Bay, we are expecting mainly cloudy skies tonight. Winds will start out about 20 kilometers an hour and then taper off down to 10 from the north. And we're looking at an overnight low of 12, so much cooler night tonight than last. It should be quieter. We're hoping quieter. But things are actually not looking too bad if you need a break from the heat for the rest of the week.
Okay, well, that is good news. Thanks a lot, Fiona. All right, when we return, we will turn our attention to federal politics. Today was the last day of the Liberal cabinet retreat, as it's known, and today the big focus was on the relationship between Canada and the U.S. We'll have details on that right after the break.
One thing I can tell you is that our American friends understand we're moving from being nice to being strategic.